Hello, 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 and welcome back to yet another NFL video. Last video started off the series of NFL team previews. Today we're going to be keeping up with that series. We got the Texans today. Now, if you watched the last video, then you would already know what I think about the Texans and how far I think they're going to go. But if you have not watched the last video, do that first. What are you doing? But I will try to not spoil it until the very end. So let's get right into it, man. Short intro. So Texans, obviously, 2022, one of the worst teams in the league, one of the worst rosters in the league, and as a result of that, they had the number two overall pick in the draft, spent that pick on C.J. Stroud, then traded back up to was it the number three pick, I think? So they had back-to-back picks in the top three, spent that pick on Will Anderson. Obviously, to this point, they had already hired D'Amico Ryans as the head coach, and that pairing it absolutely changed life for Texans fans. I mean, they instantly got off to a hot start. CJ Stroud looked amazing, and they ended up winning 10 games in the regular season and made the playoffs, won a playoff game against an amazing defense in the Cleveland Browns, lost to the Ravens in the divisional round, but a completely unexpected shock of a season. And really a team playing far above their capabilities in terms of just a roster. They had so many players last season that broke out. And it's just because in 2022, a lot of people would have said the Texans are the worst roster in the NFL. But that's the very next season with mainly the same roster, but just different coaching resulted in an extra 7 wins and a playoff win. So that just goes to show you, man, if you have the right coach, if you have the perfect fit and a head coach in there, just how much it can change things. And CJ Stroud gets a lot of credit and deservingly so. But I really do feel like D'Amico Ryans, if he's not there, the Texans don't go anywhere close to winning, 10 games. So let's take a look at what they were statistically last season. So I'll talk about both coordinators here. So offensively, the offensive coordinator was Bobby Slowick, I believe. First year coordinator had previously spent time in San Francisco along with D'Amico Ryans, but it was his first year as offensive coordinator with a rookie quarterback. Think about what I just said. Rookie quarterback, first year offensive coordinator, and they had the least turnovers in the entire NFL. That is amazing. Like that is like they deserve a trophy for that. It's such an insane accomplishment when taking into account the circumstances. And in other categories, they were top 10, obviously passing offense in the league. But they weren't outstanding. They weren't really bad anywhere. CJ got sacked a good amount of times, but that's pretty much middle of the pack, to be honest with you. They didn't run the ball incredibly well, but they threw it well enough to be an upper half total yards per game. They were a good offense. I don't think anybody can argue with that. Take into account as well that CJ ended up missing 2 games. So I would give that their offensive grade, I'd give it like an A or an A minus, honestly. For a rookie quarterback, first year offensive coordinator, they did more than enough to be impressive and explosive on offense. And then defensively, I believe the man's name is like Matt Burke. He's not a first year guy. He's been in the league for a long time, but it was his first year in Houston as the defensive coordinator, obviously under D'Amico Ryans. I honestly felt like their defense was more impressive than their offense. I mean, they weren't bottom of the pack in anything. Keep in mind, this is the defense with like no superstars on it. They had a lot of young guys like Derek Stingley, Will Anderson. I mean, Jonathan Grenard had a breakout year, but it's like they didn't have any established, like great players on that team. Like this was a team that was extremely young and ended up playing well above their capabilities. I mean, they were the sixth best running defense in the league. They were I mean, top 18 in pretty much everything besides passing yards allowed, which is very understandable. But it's like this is an extremely young team with young coaches and first year coaches across the board that just exceeded all expectations, like by everybody's standards. So let's take a look here at the new depth chart. A lot of changes on both sides of the ball. I'll get into it for you. Quarterback, obviously, we know CJ Stroud's returning. Running back, so they lose Devin Singletary, who had a very, very good year last season. Replace him with Joe Mixon. This has to be an upgrade according to everybody. Joe Mixon, really one of the more underrated backs in the league, incredibly consistent. And honestly, this might sound a little crazy to say, but kind of a sneaky on a Hall of Fame trajectory. I'm just talking about statistically here. Joe Mixon in Cincinnati, he spent several years there, and really his production over time will kind of blow your mind. If you go and just look at the stats, Joe Mixon has really been a top tier guy in Cincinnati. So bringing him in for a team that struggled to run the ball last season, I expect Joe Mixon to fit in very well um, in Houston. And you still got Damian Pierce behind him, who, yeah, for Damian Pierce had a really good rookie season when the rest of the team around him was awful, but for some reason could not find his footing last season. You would like to hope that he could, take a step forward in year three. But even if he doesn't, you got Joe Mixon, who's already proven he can be a reliable bell cow back for you. So it's a win-win there in the running back room. The wide receivers, we already knew last season, the duo of Nico Collins and Tank Dell caught everybody by surprise, right? Nico Collins really had a breakout year, like a borderline all pro caliber season. Nobody saw that coming. And then Tank Dell was like a third round rookie, went to Houston in college, played Houston as, in his NFL career now. He was incredibly explosive, got hurt, unfortunately, did not play as much as he could have, but he was incredibly exciting and explosive when he was out there. A very surprising rookie. They bring in Stephon Diggs to be the veteran presence on this team. Now, a lot of talk has kind of taken place on, is he the number one? Is Nico Collins the number one? I don't think it matters. I think Diggs, obviously, with his pedigree and what he's done in his career thus far, I mean, he's a borderline Hall of Famer himself, just based off what he's accomplished in terms of Pro Bowls, All Pros, statistically leading the league in catch, whatever. Like, he is a top tier receiver, but he's past that 30-year mark. I don't know how his body's doing, like, but I would expect, like, he has not fallen off yet. He is still at the top of his powers, in my opinion. I would expect him to take a step back statistically because of the talent around him now. Not saying he didn't have talent like that, but I mean, in Buffalo, I mean, who was his best number two? Was it Gabe Davis? I mean, Nico Collins is already better than anybody he ever played with in Buffalo in terms of talent around him. I would even wager that Tank Dell is better than the best of, Gabe Davis. But, Stephon Diggs, I think he is going to fit in well. Obviously, you got Nico on the outside. Stephon can move him anywhere. Tank Dell, you can use him however you want. So I don't expect any issues here with adding Diggs. I think it's only going to make the passing game and the offense as a whole better. So starting off, Stephon Diggs, Joe Mixon, major additions here. The tight end room, Dalton Schultz he came in from the Cowboys last season, his first year. I thought he did very well, and I expect him to be very good again next season. I thought it was a really good fit between him and CJ Stroud. It doesn't even show it here, but they drafted Cade Stover in like the fourth round, I believe. Cade Stover obviously played in college with CJ Stroud, so he's not listed on the depth chart here. I expect him to make the roster, and I mean, having that as a backup option, imagine goal line situations where you have multiple tight ends on the field and you have a guy who's already played with CJ Stroud out there. I expect Cade Stover to have a pretty big impact for a fourth round rookie tight end. And the offensive line, I'll be honest, I really like the offensive line. I really like their combination of tackles. Obviously, Laramie Tunzel is one of the best in the league. Titus Howard was hurt last year, but in 2022, when you look at when he was healthy, he was a very good player. Shaq Mason, obviously, very experienced, multiple Super Bowls under his belt. And the two interior linemen, Juice Scruggs, Kenyon Green, both very young players, both have room to improve, but I think they will improve drastically next season. And then defensively here, just so many massive upgrades across the board, notably on this front seven. They already had Will Anderson, who as a rookie showed that he is one of the most like his potential is through the roof, and he showed that as a rookie. Adding the Nico Autry, who had an amazing year last year with the Titans. I mean, just adding to Nico Autry would have been a massive addition. But you go in and bring in Danielle Hunter, and let me tell you this about Danielle Hunter. He does not get mentioned with the Myles Garretts and the TJ Watts and the Nick Bosa's of the world, but he absolutely should. Just statistically speaking, over the last 2 years, it is hard to prove that Danielle Hunter has not been the best edge rusher in football. And you might think I'm crazy for saying that, but I'll show you what I mean when we bring up the numbers here. Aziz Al-Shaair from the Titans, an amazing breakout season for him. I don't know if he was a Pro Bowler. He probably should have been. He had a great year, and they needed help at linebacker. He comes in to immediately be their number one stand-up linebacker. And then in the secondary, a very young secondary, I already mentioned that. They get a little bit younger here, but they add in two cornerbacks that I really, really like. Kamari Lassiter through the draft in the second round. He comes in from Georgia. He could start day one. I'm not doubting that. But you also bring in Jeff Okudah from the Falcons, who he and himself has had back to back really solid years, like good years. Like people kind of shit on Jeff Okudah because he's on his third team and he was like the highest drafted cornerback ever. I understand that, but if you just look at the stats, Jeff Okudah is not bad. He's actually good. So you bring him in. You have three guys now that I really like, and Derek Stingley, Kamari Lassiter, Jeff Okudah. I wouldn't mind any of those guys being on the field for my team. And then you also draft Kalen Bullock from USC in the third round, I believe, to be a roaming free safety ball hawk, in the back end. So I love the additions they made all around, like Stephon Diggs, Joe Mixon, Danico Autry, Daniil Hunter, Aziz Al-Shaair, Kamari Lassiter, Jeff Okudah. Those are all upgrades. All of those guys are going to help the team next year. So it's like it was an amazing offseason. I gave the Texans an A+ for their offseason. I cannot hate on it whatsoever. So let's take a look at some of these guys more in depth. I already mentioned it. We know what CJ Stroud is as a rookie. Only played 15 games. The sky is the limit. The only thing, right, is that you would hope he doesn't have a sophomore slump. That's kind of just a a myth, honestly. I mean, I don't because there's no logic or reason in my mind that I would think CJ Stroud doesn't get better next season. Like all indicators point to him taking even a bigger step forward, right? So I expect him to be honestly an MVP candidate in year two. Joe Mixon, no fumbles the last 2 years. Last season, over 1,400 yards, 12 touchdowns. Keep in mind, that's without Joe Burrow the majority of the season. So this is a guy who's playing with a weakened group around him, and he still managed to show up and show out. So I love Joe Mixon. I think he's going to be an absolute monster with the Texans. Dameon Pierce, you know, yeah, like I said, not great, but honestly, not terrible. I mean, over 500 total yards. He didn't fumble the ball. I don't a down year, but he still had over 500 yards. I'm hoping Dameon Pierce bounces back. Stephon Diggs, for that being a down year, if if 100 catches and nearly 1,200 yards and 8 touchdowns, if that's a down year, then that just goes to show the caliber of receiver that they're getting in Stephon Diggs. Nico Collins, I already mentioned it, an absolute breakout year. He missed time as well. He didn't. Yeah, he only played 15 games as well. So 1,300 yards, 8 touchdowns in 15 games is absolutely ridiculous. Shout out Nico Collins. Tank Dell only 11 games. That's kind of crazy, man. That is crazy when you think about it. 11 games, third round rookie, 760 yards, 7 touchdowns. That's ridiculous, man. It's just ridiculous. He had one less touchdown than Diggs in fucking 6 less games. And then Dalton Schultz, like I said as well, he missed a couple games. That's a very slept on season. That's honestly probably one of the 7 or 8 best seasons by any tight end last year. So I'm just saying this group of weapons offensively is ridiculous. 3 receivers, tight end, 2 running backs. Show me a group that really competes with this. I don't know if there is. I'm not sure if there is. They have a top tier running back, multiple top tier receivers. I mean, a great tight end, a great wide receiver 3, a good backup. They have it all, man. Let's take a look at the offensive line, though. I already mentioned Laramie Tunzel. We already know what he is as a pass protector, one of the best, top tier in the league. Titus Howard, this is his 2022 season because 2021 2023 he missed a lot of time, was not that good. If he can return to this form, his 2022 form, I think that's more than good enough. It's not great, it's not the best. Maybe in the future you could look to upgrade that position, but I think Titus Howard is more than good enough if he's healthy and playing like he should be. Shaq Mason, very established player, comes from Tampa Bay. Last year was his first year in Houston. I thought he played fine. That's pretty much middle of the pack for a right guard. You don't expect much more than that. Juice Scruggs as a rookie last season didn't have an amazing season, but he didn't play that much. I think in a more prominent role, playing the same position he played in college, which is center. I think he will be better than he was as a rookie. Kenyon Green, this is his 2022 stats. I don't think he played at all last season, and which might be a good thing because he was pretty horrible as a rookie in 2022. But you would hope, right? Because the guy's a first round pick from A&M. He has 2 years under his belt now. Did not play at all last season. Sat out. You would like to hope the man got better. He sharpened his tools and he comes back now. And it's a similar situation to what I said in the Eagles video, where they had Tyler Steen, the right guard. Kenyon Green in this situation can afford to be their worst offensive lineman. And I'll say this: it's not an amazing offensive line, but they don't have any liabilities. Like, I expect Kenyon Green to be at worst. I expect him to be mediocre, right? Like, I think if he's a mediocre left guard, I feel like the Texans offensive line, check mark. I'm not worried about it. So yeah, I think it's not bad with the potential to be really good actually. Defensively, I already talked. I mean, so many guys I could talk about here. Look at the pass rushers, bro. Danico Autry, 11 and a half sacks last year. And he's the third most talked about pass rusher they have right now. And he had 11 and a half sacks last year. It's insane. Daniil Hunter. This is Daniil Hunter's stats the last 2 years. Keep in mind, he hasn't missed a game. The man has not missed a game in the last 2 years. 148 tackles as an edge rusher, as an outside linebacker, 27 sacks, 35 TFLs, 44 QB hits. The man is absolutely. If you mention Nick Bosa, Myles Garrett, TJ Watt, Max Crosby, you have to put Daniil Hunter in that tier because that's what he's proven over this last couple period, these last few years. Aziz Al-Shaair, already mentioned it, breakout year with the Titans. He was amazing, absolutely amazing. It's a massive get for the Texans to acquire him. Will Anderson as a rookie, right, had as many QB hits as Daniil Hunter's been averaging like the last 2 years. Like that blows my mind. Obviously, he's not there yet, but year two, I mean, if Will Anderson was an All Pro next year, it wouldn't shock me. Like that's just I think we all understand the talent that he has right at his disposal. Um, Christian Harris, I actually really like Christian Harris, a young linebacker from Alabama. Um, he had a really good year last year and kind of slept on by a lot of people. I don't think many people would mention him, but I think him and Aziz Al-Shaair will be a very, very good duo at linebacker, and I'm excited to see them play together. Jalen Petrie had a very good rookie season, not so much last year. Not good in coverage. He was not good in coverage whatsoever. You would hope that he could either get back to a role that's more suitable for him, maybe not playing as much in coverage, maybe more of a box safety type of thing. Um, but I would like to hope that Jalen Petrie, after that amazing rookie season, could find some type of way to build on that and take a step forward. And then Derek Stingley, listen, the man has been hurt. He has missed a lot of games his first 2 years, but last season, Derek Stingley was putting up all pro numbers. I'm talking about just these three stats right here: 41.3 rating allowed, 5 interceptions, 13 PBUs. That right there is good enough to be first team all pro. I'm saying that genuinely. I listen, I look at a lot of cornerback stats. Okay. I can tell you what's good or great. This is amazing. Like Derek Stingley was absolutely incredible last year. And if he can just stay healthy, I would not be shocked at all if people are talking about Derek Stingley as one of, if not the best cornerbacks in the league. Like that's how talented he is. And he absolutely deserved to be drafted as the highest cornerback ever. So I'm just excited. I'm not a Texans fan at all, but I'm just excited to see this team play. It's so stacked and talented across the board. Now, with that being said, let's take a look at their season as a whole last year. So it was kind of rocky. I think I said earlier that they came out on fire. That was not the case. They started out 3-4. They played some solid teams, right? They played the Jaguars, the Steelers. Actually they played some pretty bad teams. They played like the entire NFC South 4 games in a row. They went 2-2, struggled against the Ravens, lost to the Colts with Anthony Richardson, I believe. Um, but then they got it going. They won three in a row against the Buccaneers, Bengals, and Cardinals. Lost to the Jaguars. Um, Broncos, they beat them. Jets, they lost. Titans, these 2 games, Titans and Browns, were without CJ Stroud. But then they won their last 2 games. I think they narrowly kind of snuck into the playoffs. But I mean, after that, those first 2 games, they got it together. They went 10-5 in that stretch. In the playoffs, that game against the Browns, I was honestly shocked. Like it felt like it was just, pat on the back, Texans. Congratulations for even making the playoffs. Nobody was expecting them to beat the Browns, I don't think. And nobody, I mean, that game was ridiculous. I mean, they ran away with it early. Like they beat the brakes off the Browns. And I mean, that was just incredible to watch. So obviously, though, nobody expected them to beat the Ravens. The Ravens beat them in week 1 and the final week of the season for the Texans. So, that was tough, but still, it's an A+ season for the Texans. They exceeded all expectations. But the thing about the Texans, I'll say last season, they did not have a signature win. That win against the Bengals, I believe, was against Joe Burrow. That was their best win, I think. But it's like the Browns actually probably was their best win. But it's like they didn't really have in the regular season a signature win, if you want to put it that way. But I'm shocked that they were 4-2. Like they dominated their division already, which is a great sign for me moving forward and trying to predict their next season. So let's get into that. This is my favorite part of the video where I try to predict what the Texans are going to do next season in their schedule. So let's do this. So starting off, I have the Texans going on a 6-game win streak to start the season. I think they get a very lucky break with their schedule because I expect the Vikings and the Patriots to be terrible. And between the Colts, Bears, Jaguars, Bills, I don't expect any of those teams to make the playoffs. Like as crazy as that might sound, I don't think any of those 4 teams are bad, but I think all of those teams are between like 8 or 9 win teams. I think the Texans are absolutely the bet by a mile. I think the Texans will be favored heavy in each of these first 6 games, and I think they're going to deliver. I think their offense will be very impressive. I think their defense is going to come to play. You have multiple conference games here. I think that you're going to win both of those. I mean, I just think it's going to be easy. I think the Texans are going to come out the gates on fire and kind of take that crown early as the early season favorites to go all the way. Um, but then I think their first loss is going to come on the road against the Packers. It's probably what this would be like October, November. It might be pretty cold this game. So I think that'll be their first loss to a pretty good Packers team, in my opinion. Then I think they're going to, win one, lose one, beat the Colts at home on the road against the Jets again. Probably not the weather you'd like as a Texans fan. And they lost the Jets last season. Keep that in mind. They struggled against the Jets defense. I think that could, play a role into next season as well. Following up that though, I think they rattle off 5 in a row. I think it's going to be a couple streaks here for the Texans. And listen, they play some good teams here. There's not a bad team in this 5 game stretch. Lions obviously extremely good. I think that'll be a great game, by the way. At the Cowboys, in-state rivalry, that'll be a great game against the Dolphins. I mean, they play a lot of good teams and a lot of good offenses here. But I just think you got 3 of these at home. I just think the Texans pull it out. I just have that much faith in the roster. It's the best roster in the league, in my opinion. And then I think they lose on the road against the Chiefs. That'll be some terrible weather. I think that's going to be a really tough one to win. Again, on top of that, playing the Chiefs, it's tough to beat them anywhere and any time of the season. Then you come at home against the Ravens. That'll be a tough game, but I think the Texans home field advantage. I think they'll pull that one out narrowly. And then on the road at the Titans, the reason I have them losing this game is because I believe at this point they'll have already clinched the number 1 seed, and I think they will not have their starters playing in this game against the Titans. So I think that is the reason why I have them losing this final game on the road against the Titans. And it'll be a feel-good game. Maybe the Titans make the playoffs off this win, so who knows? But yeah, that's how I feel so far about the Texans. So I had them I got them at 13-4 and the first seed in the AFC. So with that being said, let's take a look at how I think the playoffs are going to go for them. Divisional round, I think they beat the Ravens. Revenge for last season they went 0-2 against the Ravens. Next season, I think they could go 2-0 against the Ravens. That would be a very good way to flip the script. Close game, great players on both sides, but I think the Texans narrowly get it done. Following that, AFC Championship game against the Chiefs, a rematch. They played them in the regular season. I think they beat the Chiefs. I think they would be, keep in mind, the Texans would be the home team. So you would not have to factor in the Chiefs in the environment, the weather, any of that. It would be in the Texans stadium, a dome, I believe, the Energy Stadium, whatever it is. So that would be a massive advantage here for the Texans. And I think they pull it off. I think they're a better roster. I think they would have more momentum by this point. And that's my pick. They'd be at home. I think they got a lot of things going for them. And they would be the first team to beat the Chiefs in not the Super Bowl since the Bengals in 2021. So that would be a massive win for the Texans. Then in the Super Bowl against the Eagles, if you watch that video, I do have the Texans losing narrowly to the Eagles. It'd just be too perfect. It would just be too perfect if the Texans went all the way. Look, they made the divisional round last year. I think they make the Super Bowl in year 2 under CJ Stroud. And let me say this. I absolutely expect the Texans to win a Super Bowl under CJ Stroud's rookie contract, but I'm not all the way there. Don't get me wrong. If they won, I wouldn't be shocked at all. I'm this close to picking them, but I think the Eagles would narrowly edge them out in a great game. Don't know where the Super Bowl is going to be played next year, but I think it'd be a great game. Eagles win a great Super Bowl, an amazing season for the Texans. 13-4, AFC champions, 5-1 in their division. I mean, they play a lot. They play a lot of good teams in this. Like it's not an easy schedule whatsoever, but I think they're just that good of a team where they're going to dominate. And yeah, man, that's how I feel about the Texans. And here's the trajectory now. I showed you at the beginning, and things are changing. Things are changing very quickly in Houston, man. But yeah, that's gonna be it for this video. Leave a like if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you on the next one. Peace.